Today's daf we're going to be learning is Bava Metzia Daf Kufyud. Today's daf is sponsored in loving memory of Elon Weiss, brother of Tzipi Churi, one of the Hadran learners, who was killed on Shabbat in Gaza. Elon also learned Daf Yomi daily, even while he was serving on the front lines. Yehi Zechro Baruch. We're going to get started where we finished yesterday with the Machloket Abaye and Rava. We had this case about someone who took a land as collateral and for 10 years, but after 5 years, it already got to the point where it wasn't useful anymore. And as was to be expected, Abaye says, well, we just view it as payroll at this point, and the person who had the field for collateral can cut whatever's there, sell it, take the value of the item, and then the borrower would just have to compensate for the difference of what the borrower still owed. Rava said, no, you have to treat it as the principal. You can't just get rid of it. You have to sell it and buy some piece of land with it, obviously a smaller piece. And that's the opinion that we're going to see much more support for than Abaye's opinion. So we're on the second question against Abaye. Bottom of Kuf Tenem Bet, last line. Tashma naflula kfanim v'zeitim zkenim. Okay, now this is a woman who inherits vines and olives that are already old, meaning it's already dried out. Okay, that's not going to produce any more fruits. So you sell it for the trees, for the wood, and then you buy land, and with it, she then, now what's the issue here? Why is this similar? Because a woman, when she's married, okay, she inherited this while she was married, her husband has rights to the payroll. So you have to be able to return her something. The husband can't just take what's there and use it, but he has to turn it into something that will produce produce, and she'll get something back at the end. So this seems to go against Abaye, who said it's payroll. It's the same kind of idea. Ema v'hizkinu. So we correct it, that source, and we say, oh, it means not that they were already zkinim, but they turned to zkinim later. In other words, it wasn't expected that it was going to happen. Because it wasn't expected, so he has to keep the keren. But if it was expected, like the case of Rav and Abaye, then you could say it could be treated like payroll. The ibai dema, and that's not as it was expected. In this case, and that's in the collateral case, it was expected. In this case, she got it. It was already dead. So that's why in that case, you theoretically could turn it into payroll, but that's not the case that was mentioned. Ibai dema, second interpretation. They already explained that source when it came up last time in Ketubot. They explained that source there that it was a case where she inherited these in someone else's field. She inherited vines, but the field wasn't hers. So in the case of the collateral where everything's dead, but at least the person gets back the principal, and that's why the land. And that's why you could say that Abaye didn't care that you cut everything down, because at least there's land left. And maybe there's nothing growing in it, but there's at least land left. Here, in the case of the woman, it's a case where she never inherited land, and therefore you can't turn it and just cut it, because then there's nothing left. You have to always leave her with something. If there had been land there, you would have been able to sell all the stuff and for wood and take the money. So now we have a shtar. It just says, it doesn't say how many years this collateral was given. Malva Amar Shalosh, she said, I get it for 3 years. And, in 3 years, the loan will be up. Lova Amar Shtaim. Lova said, you only get it for 2 years, but it doesn't say anything in the shtar. Kadim Malva Vachlinu Lepere, Mina Eman. If the Malva then ate the 3rd year of produce without going to court yet, who is believed? So the fruits were already eaten of the 3rd year. So Rabbi Yehuda said, Amal, Karka B'cheskat Ba'aleh Omedet. The karka belongs to the lova. So the lova has the upper hand, and therefore can remove the payroll from the borrower, from the lender. Sorry, not the borrower, the malva, right? The malva who ate the produce of the year. The lova, the borrower, can take it out, make him pay for it. Rav Kahana Amar, payroll b'cheskat ochlehen kaimi. Rav Kahana says the payroll were already eaten. So if you want to get the malva to pay back the value of that whole year, well, that's a case of hamotzi v'chaver olav haraya. Right? So Rabbi Yehuda says the chazaka isn't who owned the land, that's the borrower. But Rav Kahana says, what do you mean? The chazaka is what was already done. We don't take money out of someone unless we have clear proof, and we don't have clear proof. So the malva wins out the lender. We pass like Rav Kahana to Amar perot b'cheskat ochlehen. Okay, we say if you already ate them, then you have the upper hand. So now they say, but how could that be? Because in a different case with Rav Nachman, the case was, right, he was, okay, so Rashi reminds us, I forgot for a quick minute. The halach is like Rav Nachman in the case where someone rented out a space for 12 months. And then he said, right, this is the price for the year and this is the price per month. And we don't know which one he meant. So we say in that case, karka b'chezkat ba'alei omedet, and the one renting at the house has the right to charge for the extra 13th month when it's a leap year. So why here don't we say that? Why don't we hold that the lovet was the owner of the land and has the upper hand? Just like there, the owner of the land had the upper hand. So they say, because hatam milta de lo avida legaluyehi. That was a case where we'll never really find out which one the person meant. Did he mean by the month? Did he mean by the year? But hacha milta de avida legaluyehi. But here, this theoretically, we could find witnesses that were there when the shtar was written and knew what the intent was it 2 years or 3 years? And therefore, we're not going to then basically take money. If we held by the lovet, then we take the money out of the malva for all the fruits that he ate. And that would be one ruling of the court to take out the money. And then if we find out that really it was only for 3 years, really he had it for 3 years, we then remove the money from the lovet. So they don't want to do a ruling and then undo a ruling. And because of that, and here again, what it means is don't move the money because then you might have to move the money again. Whereas that's not a possibility in the other case. Mava omer chamesh, lova omer shalosh. What if the borrower said, the lender said it was 5 years and the borrower said 3 years? Amalei, aitele shtarech. So it says, bring me the shtar, the lova says. Amalei, shtar irkasli. Okay, this is a case that happened. The Mava said 5 years, the lova said 3 only. And the lova said, bring me your shtar. And the Mava, right, because there was a shtar, remember we learned this, a shtar mashkanta. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Malva Ne'eman. Oh, sorry. So Amar Le Shtar Irkasli. So now the Malva says, oh, I lost the shtar. I don't have it anymore. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Malva Ne'eman, Migo Dibai Amar Lekuchi Biyad. The Malva wanted to, he could have claimed, he could have just said, oh, I bought it. So instead, the fact that he said, listen, it was 5 years. I know it was 5 years and I lost it. He's believed. Now we're going to have a big debate, really, is he believed? So Amar Le Rav Papa Le Rav Ashi, Rav Rav Abira, Lo Sfir Luhada Rav Yehuda. They didn't agree with Rav Yehuda. My timer. Hai shtara kevanda leguvayna kai mizhar zarbe umichba shu dekav shel shtari. Okay, let's stop here for a minute. This shtar is the only thing the Malva has to prove that he can be in this land. And it's the kind of shtar that you wouldn't lose, because if you lose it, then you have no rights to the payroll. And the lovet can claim, what do you mean? This is my land. So this is the kind of shtar that we don't assume after 3 years you just might lose it, because it's not that kind of thing. Because really, the chazak of the land, it's someone else's land. When you buy the land after 3 years, we can assume it's yours. But here, he didn't buy the land, he's using it as collateral, and therefore people are careful with the shtar mashko not to lose it. And therefore, when he says, I lost it, we don't believe him. We think he's lying. That's what these rabbis said. He was just hoping to be able to eat the produce for another few years, and therefore he lied. Now we're going to go back to Rav Yehuda, who basically said we believe them all. Then we're going to ask another question on him. Well, if that's the case, what you're saying basically that the Malva is believed to say, oh, I lost it, and therefore I can say how many years it was. Well, in the Mashkanta Desura, when it says, B'mishlam shnin elin tipuk ara dabalo kesef, in the end of these years, the land will go back without money, meaning the loan will be paid back. Anytime someone has a Mashkanta Desura, the Malva can basically claim this land as mine. Right? We talked about this before, because he could just hide the shtar. If you think he can hide the shtar and say, he's believed to say, I lost it, then he'll just hide the shtar. And then, could it possibly be that the rabbis would institute something that would cause a loss? Okay, so this really doesn't make any sense. So now they say no. We're not really worried in a regular case that this Malva is going to take advantage. In the case we had, presumably the Malva was able to take advantage because this didn't happen. But usually when you give lamb for a mashkon, the rabbis instituted that the Love is the one who pays the taxes on the land, and he digs the ditches around for the irrigation. And that way, we have a built-in way that the borrower is showing, I own this land. And that's why the person can't ever claim I really bought it. In the case with Rav Yehuda, you'd have to say he didn't do that, okay? Because if he had done that, then the Malva would not have a claim. Oh, could have, right? He's believed because he could have said I bought it. So now they ask further, though, what if it's ara delayt la karya v'lo yav taskamai? What are you going to do in a case where the lova didn't do this? So they say the borrower has to protest, has to make a statement every few years. Oh, just making sure everybody knows this is my land. Otherwise, they really could get stuck. Lo imchemai, what if he didn't? Well, then, well, it's your tough luck for not being smart about it. So now we have a debate between an aris. We're having a lot of different debates today about who's believed over who. So the aris, the sharecropper, says, I was supposed to get 50% of the produce. And the balabayit says, what do you mean? Well, our arrangement was you get a third, mina eman, who's believed. So again, Rav Yehuda says balabayit ne'eman, Rav Nachman amar kol kiminhag medina. So Rav Yehuda says we believe the balabayit, the owner, just similar to what he said in the beginning, right? We believe the person who's the owner of the land. Rav Nachman said it all goes by the custom in the land. Several meaning, they originally thought lo pligi, haba'atra deshakalarisa palga, haba'atra deshakalarisa tilta. There's no machloket. One is a place where the custom is the aris takes half. And that's why we do kiminhag medina. And the other, and therefore the aris will be believed. Shakalarisa tilta, when we say the balabayit's believed, Rav Yehuda said that, because the balabayit is believed to say a third, because it was a place where that was the custom, was a third. And then really the whole thing is kiminhag medina. But that's not the case, because Amar Luhu Rav Meri Baradu Bat Shmuel. Rav Meri was the son of the daughter of Shmuel. Remember, we had a whole story there, but we don't go into it today. Hachi Amar Abai, Afilu Ba'atra Deshakalarisa Palga Pligi. Okay, Abai said, even in a place where the aris takes half, still they have a machloket, and perhaps the owner, we still could believe the owner, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that it's only a third. Why? Rabbi Yehuda Amar Balabayit Ne'eman Dibai Amar Schiri Ulakitihu. He could say, oh, I only hired him to work in the land as a worker. I didn't promise him any produce. Because again, this is all you're believed because you had a better lie you could have said. Yitomim omrim. Now we have orphans whose father owed money, and there was land that was subjugated to the loan. And now the land increases in value. Now, if it increased in value in the time of the father, then the person, the Baal Chov, who's owed the money, can take it with the shevach. But if the orphans did it, we don't take the shevach from the orphans. If they increase the price of the land, the value of the land, they get to keep it. So now we have a debate between the orphans and the Baal Chov about when the shevach happened. So the orphans say, we did it. And Baal Chov says, your father did it. Ami lavi raya. So who has to prove this? Turning out to Amud Bet. Rav Chanina thought to say, since the land is in the property of the Yatomim, they're the ones who own the land, as we saw a few times today, which Rabbi Yehuda said, that's what's important. So the other side needs to bring proof. But Amar Luhu Saba, Hachi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, but an elderly person said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Ala Yatomim Lavi Raya, the orphans have to bring proof. My taima, Ara Kevan de Leguvaina Kaima, Kiman de Gav Yadami. Since the land is for collection purposes, this land was supposed to be collected by that person, it's as if it was already collected. This was lien to that loan, and therefore it was as if it's already collected, and therefore we view it as if it's in the ownership of the Baal Chov, which means he's believed. And in fact, right, and then the orphans, the burden of proof is on them. Amar Abaye says, and we can further find proof for this. Safek Zekadam. This is a Mishnah in Bava Batra that's talking about if you plant your tree near the city, and then it's affecting the inhabitants of the city. We'll see that more in depth when we get there. But Safek Zekadam. Okay, if we're not sure who, okay, what happens is no matter what, whether the tree came first or the city was there first, you still have to cut down the tree. But if the tree was there first, then they pay the owner of the tree the value of his tree. If the tree came after and they planted it in a place they shouldn't have planted it, then they don't get the money for the tree. So what if it's a suffix, which was first, which is like our case? So you cut it without, and you don't pay back the money for the tree because of a suffix. Alma, what do you see here? Why don't you pay the money back if it's suffix? Since anyway you're going to cut it down. In other words, in any case, you have to cut the tree down. So therefore, the burden of proof is on you to prove your point. So same thing here. This star, since you're going to collect it, it's as if it's been already collected. So it's the same idea. We go by what the default is, what's going to happen anyway. And then the burden of proof is on the other side, or whatever, on the side of the one who loses. Right, so the land will get taken away, the tree will get chopped down, and therefore it's on those people to bring the proof. What if the orphans brought proof that they actually increased the land? So now they get back the value of the increase. How do they get it back, though? In land or in money? They get like a portion of the property that's worth the amount that they increased. So Savar Rabbi Chanina Lememar, he thought to say, okay, when you give them back, you give them back in land. But it's not in fact true. Actually, they get paid money. And they get it in money, not in land. And this is going to be something we saw already before. Bava Kama. Mida Rav Nachman. The Amar Rav Nachman Rav Shmuel. We're now going to quote the statement that Rav Nachman quoted in the name of Shmuel, and we'll deal with this for a little while. There's three people who evaluate the increase in the land that they did, and they get it back, but in money, not in land. And who are they? We divide the land, the Bechor gets 2 portions, and everyone else gets 1 portion. So now, right, so if there's 3 sons, we're going to divide it into 4. The Bechor gets 2, the other ones get 2. But if after the father died, the Bechor invested in the land, any investment, anything that happens after the father's dead, the Bechor doesn't get double. So when the Bechor invested in his part of the land, before it was divided, he has to give back the extra part that he took 2 parts of. He doesn't get 2 parts of the enhancements, and that he gives back to them in money and not in land. That's our case. When someone, right, takes land from Yatomim, or the woman takes her ketubah from the land of the orphans, and there was investment of the orphans in the land, or Baal Chov L'Lekuchot. And this is the one we're going to deal with. So Baal Chov L'Lekuchot, if a Baal Chov, I have land that's liened to a loan I have, and then I sell it to someone, and they enhance the property, and then the land gets seized from them by the owner with all the enhancements. So they come back to me and say, hey, I put enhancements into it. I got the land back. I get the money back. Well, that Baal Chov can only get it in money. Amalei Ravina LeRavashi. The Meimer to Savar Shmuel Baal Chov LeLekuchot. Really? Umi Ilei Shvacha LeLokach. Does the Lokach even get the Sheva? First of all, okay, he doesn't even get the Shevach back because Hamar Shmuel Baal Chov Goveh Ta Shevach. Okay, so he said the Baal Chov is Goveh. Which means the Baal Chov gets to keep the Shevach, which means, I guess, yeah, sorry, I said it wrong. The Lakach will go to the Baal Chov and take the extra. When the Baal Chov takes it, let's say it was a $100 loan, $100 piece of land. The Baal Chov takes the land, it was now worth $125. So the buyer can take away from the Baal Chov the 25. So now they say, but Shmuel says, Baal Chov Goveh Ta Shevach. He keeps the land with the 125. If you want to say, it really depends whether it was produce that was already ready to be cut or not. And if it was ready to be cut, then we view it as, that shevach goes back to the buyer. But if it wasn't, then not. But we see that Shmuel does collect that. So how could it be the Shmuel says you can't, right? That the owner does collect. And here he said, right, that you give it back in money. So lo kasha, it really depends on whether you the loan was worth 125 or 100. If it was worth 100, then you don't get 125. If it was worth 125, then you could collect the whole thing. So now we're going to ask a question. Okay. And if you want to say, okay, so let's just read that line again. If it didn't reach the amount, meaning it was only 100. And then what did we say? Right? If it didn't reach 100, that's how we explained it before. It didn't reach 125. The land with the shevach was worth 125, but the loan was only 100. So basically, the guy owed the money, would pay the 25 back only in money, though not in land. So this is only going to work according to some interpretations. If we say the buyer, now again, I owed the money and I sold my land to someone, and then the property, they knew it was liened. Now, the guy I owed money to went to get the land from the buyer. There's two options. Can the buyer basically say, here, I'm paying you the money for the loan, don't take my land, or not? Or do they have no choice but to give the land? So if you say, if he had money, he could kick the Baal Chov off, then we understand. He couldn't kick the Baal Chov off. Then we understand, because no matter what, the Baal Chov, the one who's owed the money, the creditor gets the land. And that's why he only has to pay him in money. But if you say, if the buyer had money, the buyer could pay off the other guy and keep the land. Well, if he could keep the land in that case, we should say the same thing here. If I had the money, I would get you off the entire piece of land. I don't have, but I'm giving you the land, but the land's worth more. So at least give me the 25 extra in land. I want the amount of land that I increase the property in land, not in money. And if he really has a right to keep the land originally, if he could pay the money, then he should be able to do this. So, how do we explain this case then, since that doesn't make sense according to that person? Well, it must be it must be a case where he made him in a potiki, where he made the land in a potiki, which means that the land was designated from the beginning of the loan. When I took out the loan, I said, this is the property you will collect from, not just any property I have as lien, but you will collect only for this property. And then the mother has full rights to all that property and only has to pay back in money. But we wouldn't necessarily say that if it weren't the case, again, depending on who you hold by. So that was all the difficulty on Shmuel from other things Shmuel said, and then how we reconcile all that together. New Mishnah. You get a field to work for Shavua Echad B'Shva Me'otzuz. So it was for seven years for 700 zuz, but you call it a Shavua. You don't say 7 years, you say a Shavua, which is a 7-year cycle. Hashvi Minam Yan. So you're basically going to work on that field, including the Shemitah year as part of that, because a Shavua includes the Shemitah year. Right? A Shavua in their day was not a week, but a set of 7 years. But if you said 7 years for 700 zuz, then Ein Hashvi Minam Yan, then we don't count the Shemitah year, because you meant 7 years that I can plant crops. Shiur Yom. Now we're switching topics entirely, and we're talking about if you have to pay people on the day that they did the job. So what's your end time you can pay someone? Shiur Yom, if they work during the day, govek kol halayla. So you have the whole night to pay them until the next morning. Shiur Laila, govek kol hayom. If you work at night, you have the whole next day to pay. Shiur Shaot, if you work for hours, govek kol hayom, kol halayla, kol hayom. If you work for hours, so you have the whole night after that and the whole day. We'll have to explain all this later, why. Shiur Shabbat, if you work not on Shabbat, this means for a week. Shiur Chodesh, for a month. Shiur Shana, for a year. Shiur Shavua, for 7 years. Yatsa b'yom govek kol hayom. If you finished your job in the day, then you have the whole day to collect. Yatsa b'layla govek kol halayla v'kol hayom. If you finish your work at night, you collect during the night and the next day. We're going to have to understand why this is. We'll get to the Gemaras on this later. First, the Gemara starts off with a Braita. And how do we know the first law here about the paying money? That someone who works at night gets paid all through the next day. Someone who works during the day gets paid all through the night. Tanu Rabbanit. And we're going to see there's two different psukim. One says till the morning, one says till sunset. Minayin l'schir yom shegavek kol halayla. Talmud lamar lo talim pulat zachir itcha boker. Don't leave it until the morning. So that must be talking about someone who works at night. Someone who works during the day that has the whole night to collect. Umayin l'schir layla shegavek kol hayom. How do you know someone who works at night gets the whole day? Because the other pasuk, shenemar biyomot titein scharo, give them salary on the day, meaning till the end of the day, not till the end, not till the whole night. So they say, why did you say specifically day worker gets paid all till the next morning and night worker gets paid all through the next day? It could be the reverse. So they say, you really, the obligation to pay a sachir, we saw this in Machloket about this, is only at the end. And if it's only at the end, then we assume if you're a day worker, you work till sunset. So you can't say you have till sunset. Sunset, it's already, they're still working. So that's why it gets pushed off. Okay, and same with the night. Tanu Rabbanan. Mimashma shenemar lo talim pulat sachir itcha. Don't leave it overnight. So you don't need to say until the morning. Don't leave it overnight means until the morning. So what do we learn from aboker? There's only one day that you're over on a lotase. If you don't pay for 5 days, you don't each time transgress a negative commandment. So what do we treat you after that then if there's no transgression? Well, I'm a rabbi, which is rabbinic, okay? It's still a rabbinic issue. And I'm Rav Yosef, my crowd, where do you get this from? The pasuk. Okay, he quotes a pasuk from Mishlei, which said, basically saying this is not an appropriate thing to do. So even though you don't have a negative transgression every day, but it is a rabbinic law that you shouldn't do this. And with that, we finish today's daf, wishing everyone a good day. And hopefully we'll have better news today.